On May 16, 2006, a successful writer disappeared without a trace from his Baltimore home. 8 days later, his body was found in one of the most impossible locations imaginable. What happened in between has baffled investigators, devastated a family, and created one of the most perplexing death mysteries of the 21st century. This is the death of Rey Rivera. Rey Rivera wasn't supposed to end up as a mystery. He was living the dream. At 32 years old, he had a beautiful wife, Allison, a promising career as a financial writer, and had just moved to Baltimore for an exciting new opportunity. He was a former college swimmer, tall, athletic, intelligent. He wrote screenplays in his spare time. By all accounts, Rey was happy, optimistic about his future, and deeply in love with his wife. But on the evening of May 16th, something changed everything. Rey and Allison were at home that Tuesday evening when Rey's cell phone rang. We don't know who called. We don't know what was said. But whatever that phone conversation contained, it made Rey jump up suddenly, tell Allison he had to go, and rush out of their house. He didn't say where he was going. He didn't say when he'd be back. Allison heard him leave in a hurry. And that was the last time she ever saw her husband alive. When Rey didn't come home that night, Allison grew worried. When he didn't come home the next day, she knew something was terribly wrong. Rey wasn't the type to disappear. He wasn't the type to ignore calls or messages. Allison reported him missing, and the search began. But here's where things get strange. Rey's car was found 2 days later in a parking lot near the Belvedere Hotel in downtown Baltimore. The car was parked, undamaged. His glasses and flip-flops were inside. But Rey was nowhere to be found. For 6 agonizing days, family, friends, and investigators searched for any sign of Rey Rivera. They searched neighborhoods, questioned people, followed every lead they could. Nothing. It was as if he had vanished into thin air. But on May 24th, 8 days after Rey disappeared, a maintenance worker at the Belvedere Hotel made a discovery that would turn this missing person case into one of the most baffling mysteries in recent history. The worker noticed a hole in the roof of a lower annex building attached to the hotel. It looked recent. When he investigated further, looking down through that hole, he saw something that made his blood run cold. A body, lying on the floor of an abandoned room. It was Rey Rivera. But how he got there defied all logic. Let's talk about this hole for a second, because this is where the mystery really begins. The hole in the roof was not above the main Belvedere Hotel. It was on a lower annex building, an extension that sat behind the main structure. To reach this roof, Rey would have had to run across the main hotel roof and launch himself off the edge with enough force to clear a significant gap and crash through the roof of the annex. We're talking about a horizontal distance that would require a running start and serious momentum. The medical examiner ruled Rey's death a suicide, concluding he had jumped from the top of the Belvedere. But here's the problem. The physics don't add up. Multiple experts have analyzed the trajectory needed to create that hole where Rey's body was found. To punch through that roof at that location, Rey would have needed to be running at full speed and leap with the force of an Olympic long jumper. Possible? Maybe. But here's what makes it strange. Rey's injuries, while fatal, were not consistent with a fall from the 14-story Belvedere Hotel. If he had fallen from that height, roughly 170 feet, his body would have been far more severely damaged. Some investigators believe his injuries suggest a shorter fall. But from where? And how did he end up going through that specific roof? And there's more. Rey's phone and glasses were found on the roof near the hole. Not in his pockets. On the roof. As if they had been placed there. His flip-flops were in his car, meaning he likely wasn't wearing shoes when he died. Why would someone run and jump off a building barefoot? Why would his phone and glasses be neatly positioned on the roof instead of falling with him or being in his pockets? If you're finding this case as bizarre as I am, make sure you're subscribed because we cover the most mysterious unsolved cases on this channel, and trust me, this one only gets stranger. The night Rey disappeared, security cameras at the Belvedere should have captured something. The hotel had cameras. But here's the thing. The footage from that night was never made available to Rey's family or to the public. The hotel claimed there was nothing useful on the tapes. But how could that be? If Rey entered the building, ran across the roof, and jumped, wouldn't that be captured somewhere? The lack of video evidence has fueled suspicions that something is being hidden. Then there's the question of access. The roof of the Belvedere Hotel wasn't easy to get to. It was a secured area. Doors were locked. Alarms were in place. If Rey went to the roof, how did he get there without triggering alarms or being stopped? Did someone let him in? Did he have a key? These questions have never been answered. Now let's talk about the note. After Ray's body was discovered, investigators found something taped behind his computer at home. A bizarre, rambling note that read like something out of a conspiracy thriller. The note referenced movies, friends, family members, Freemasons, and contained phrases that seemed cryptic and disjointed. Some have interpreted it as a suicide note. Others believe it was a draft for a screenplay or a coded message. Allison, Ray's wife, insists it wasn't a suicide note. She says Ray was working on creative projects and the note was part of his writing. But the contents remain one of the most debated aspects of this case. Here's what we know for sure. Rey Rivera worked for Agora Publishing, a financial publishing company owned by his childhood friend, Porter Stansberry. Stansberry ran a financial newsletter business, and Ray wrote promotional materials and reports. It was a good job. Ray was doing well. But after Ray's death, Porter Stansberry did something that raised eyebrows. He refused to speak to investigators. He lawyered up immediately. He issued a gag order to employees at Agora, forbidding them from talking to police about Ray. Why? If your childhood friend dies under mysterious circumstances, wouldn't you want to help find answers? Stansberry has never publicly explained why he refused to cooperate with the investigation. Agora Publishing has remained silent, and that silence has led to rampant speculation. Was Ray involved in something at work that got him killed? Did he know something he shouldn't have? Was the phone call that made him leave his house that night related to his job? We don't know, because the people who might have answers aren't talking. Some theories suggest Ray was murdered and his body was staged to look like a suicide. The positioning of his phone and glasses, the strange physics of the fall, the lack of video evidence, all point to potential foul play. But if he was murdered, who did it and why? Other theories suggest Ray was in the midst of a mental health crisis that nobody knew about, that the note was a sign of paranoia or delusion, and that he took his own life in a tragic, impulsive moment. But those who knew Ray insist he showed no signs of mental distress. He was happy. He was planning for the future. Allison Rivera has spent nearly 2 decades searching for answers. She's pushed for the case to be re-examined. She's hired private investigators. She's fought to keep Ray's story alive, hoping that someone, somewhere, knows something that could finally explain what happened. In 2020, Ray's case was featured on the Netflix series Unsolved Mysteries, bringing renewed attention and thousands of tips. But as of today, the case remains officially unsolved. So what really happened to Rey Rivera? Did he run across that roof and jump to his death? If so, why? What was in that phone call? Why did his employer refuse to cooperate? Was he murdered and thrown from a lower height, with his body carefully staged to look like a suicide? Or is there another explanation entirely, something we haven't even considered? The truth is, we may never know. But what we do know is that Rey Rivera's death doesn't add up. Too many questions, too many inconsistencies, too much silence from people who should be talking. And until those questions are answered, Ray's story will continue to haunt everyone who hears it. If you want justice for Ray in cases like his, drop a comment below with your theory on what happened. Do you think this was suicide or murder? And make sure you hit that subscribe button because we're not stopping until we find the truth. This is a case that deserves answers. Rey Rivera deserves answers. And we're going to keep digging until we get them.